and welcome to the Quikstart podcast. I am your host, Matt Collins, and today I am joined by Mark Bartz, who is the co-founder and director of product management for Medical Sales Mentors. How's it going, Mark?
Good. Thank you, Matt. Good to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, man, what a crazy time we're living in. We got a global pandemic. We have the presidential elections coming up.
Yeah.
In fact, the presidential debate is tonight, for those of you who aren't aware. Pretty crazy stuff. And today we want to talk about, as for those who've listened to our podcast before, we generally pick a couple topics to discuss, and we just sort of run with it. And today we want to talk about the top mistakes in your job search, or what mistakes people are making when they're performing a job search.
Well, you run with it, Matt. I kind of walk because I'm an old man now. You know that. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we got to get.
I do my best. I jog a little bit and then I walk. You run. So.
we got to get the notes prepared for you, all
that's
all
right.
Outlined out. That's okay.
I got my Geritol all ready to go here, buddy. Come on, let's do it.
Oh man. Sometimes it could turn into a bad episode of Murder, She Wrote. That's all right. Anyways, so yeah, we got the presidential debates coming up. There's a lot of stuff going on in the news, obviously. Even some panic. People are hurting out there. We've obviously experienced it personally with clients that we work with. There's a lot of desperation, and people are kind of yearning for information on next steps and what they can do. And so we're trying to get the information out there so people, obviously we have the tools and the services to help people in their job search, but we like to give people information so that, if they're going through a hard time, or if they need some help with, basic stuff, we're here to kind of mentor them through the process. And so we appreciate everyone joining us today and listening in. And another thing too, with the audios and whatnot, with the last couple of podcasts, we appreciate everyone's patience. We now are in a situation where both of our audio is working great and hopefully crystal clear for everyone. I know, Mark, we had some issues with with some of the audio on the first podcast.
We put a man on the moon, damn it. We can do this. So, all right.
Yes, we are it is 2020, right?
I think so.
All right. Well, let's get the ball rolling here.
Okay.
So right off the top, the tip of your tongue, Mark, why are people waiting too long to start a job search? And, obviously the first term that comes to, the first saying that comes to mind is, selling yourself short. People sell themselves short all the time. It's the fear of the unknown. They're familiar with a certain career, or, they're nervous about maybe looking into something else. And it's always taking that jump. People tend to go with what's comfortable. We're creatures of rationalization and comfort. And we're always striving, in a sense, to stay in our comfort zone. And I like the idea of being comfortable in the chaos sometimes, because you have to really put yourself out there, especially when you're looking for something else. You have to be open-minded, and you have to be willing to take risks. So why are people, in your experience, waiting too long to start a job search, and why do they sell themselves short?
Good gosh. I put it to you this way. I've been doing this for 23 years. And if you talk to anybody that's been out there as long as I have, and you ask them, what is the number one biggest challenge or mistake that you see in job search? And I guarantee you, they're all going to tell you the same thing, independent of one another. They're going to tell you that people sell themselves short, or they don't even start a job search, or they start a job search, but they wait too long. So I think it's kind of a pain thing. It's like, okay, they're at work, they know they're underpaid, they know that their boss is a clone of Stalin or something, and they don't like that pain, but they're in the back of their mind, they believe that they can't do better. And it's sad to see a lot of people don't read the writing on the wall. They see it, but they don't believe it. And then they wait until it's too late, and all of a sudden, they've been laid off. So time is not your friend when it comes to a job search. You always want to be proactive. You always want to be out there looking for a role, even if it's not in fifth gear, at least in first gear. Because if you don't, then you don't have the destiny in your own hands. I think at the end of the day, though, it really comes down to people not being able to see themselves objectively in a mirror, and when they do, they're overly critical. And a lot of what we do here is we pull people back from the mirror and we help them to understand, okay, here's your unique value, here's how we should market you, here's the type of role that you should be aiming for. And at the end of the day, it's all about focusing the people on who they are, and then giving them confidence. People don't have confidence these days. I mean, we kind of live in an overly critical world where everybody's telling you, you're this or that or something else, and you're never quite, lining up for the roles that people want. And then, the minute someone goes into a job search, they're reading this job profile and the qualifications, and they suddenly realize nobody has those qualifications. This would have to be like the Pope or Clark Kent or something that has those kind of qualifications. And so they immediately think, okay, that's uh, the 10 scale, and I measure up on a 6.5 or whatever, and they get discouraged and they walk away, not realizing that it really kind of comes down to packaging and promoting you. You can do whatever you want. You just need sage advice and some confidence.
Well, and I remember so many times, in the past when, you're looking for jobs online, whether it be like Indeed or Monster, or, there's so many of them out there. And
Right.
you look at the qualifications or the qualifications for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they have this big long list of all the requirements they desire to fill the position. And you're just like, good God,
Yeah.
it's pretty daunting sometimes.
Well, you become your own worst enemy too. People tend to be extremely self-critical. And, just literally yesterday, I had one of my candidates who had been out of the work force for years, who was just down and discouraged and, depressed. And hey, guess what? He just landed a gig. The base salary, 100K, bonus, really good, totally doable. And again, it came back to, okay, we had to focus him, package him, encourage him, and then, these good stories can be told. So,
Well, and one thing that comes to mind is kind of faking it till you make it. We've all heard the term,
yeah,
but sometimes you can't psych yourself out when you're looking at the requirements for a job, or when you're
no,
thinking about doing something different. I know, you're familiar with the pilot program we're developing,
hmm
where we're working specifically with pirates. Yeah, we're working with pirates.
we're working
Um,
with pirates, and apparently we are the niche service for pirates that want to move on to other careers. So,
well, they're
better longevity. Being a pirate today is not a longevity type role.
you'd think being a thief would be pretty useful these days.
Pilot, yes, pilots. We get it. Let's go down that road. So yeah, that whole industry is shaping up into something completely different, obviously in large measure due to COVID. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if you're getting out of that industry, moving on to something different is can be
Hard.
pretty. Yeah. I mean, you know how to fly, and that's what you've done. what do you do now?
How do I
Especially
move on? Yeah.
especially with we're hearing things like some 10,000 employees are going to be could be possibly laid off in the near future. The airline industry might completely change.
Yeah, that near future is coming up real quick because from what I'm reading, it's the first week in October. There are thousands of folks that are being laid off. And the sad thing is, those companies that are laying them off are not really preparing them to move on with their careers. And they're kind of giving them a pink slip and some money and saying, hey, good luck. So, how do you change? Change is so hard for people. You got to have someone that can stand there and be objective and help you to make that change and help you to understand who you are, because frankly, you are not what your job is and you're constantly changing, and it's very hard to be objective. Once again, looking in the mirror, we're just going to be overly critical of ourselves.
Well, the landscape's completely changed.
Yeah.
We're not going door to door giving out our resume anymore. I mean, how many people honestly have success submitting a resume online? That's all that they do.
Virtually
Very,
none.
very
Yeah,
little. Yeah. And it
virtually none.
comes down to branding yourself online,
Mm-hmm.
because now we have all these tools at our disposal, especially recruiters and HR managers. They have all these online tools and networking tools that they can use to find the candidates that they want. So what do you say to those people? You say this a lot, you should always be looking for something better. Or you should always be looking for a possible new, door opening for you. As well as I do that most people don't do that. Most people generally are comfortable where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
They're complacent, and they're just kind of going to work every day, coming home, going same routine. And how do they break out of that mindset to be and that kind of segues into branding yourself online, because there's all these little things that you can do to keep yourself keep the opportunities flowing, I guess. So what do you
I
say to
think
those people that are complacent and they're just kind of going to work and they're just settling in a sense for what
well,
they already have?
I think it's that the job that they have is a sure thing, so they want to hang on to that. And I was just reading some stats here in the new jobbite.com annual survey of job seekers, and it really struck me that most of them are worried, and they recognize it's going to be a lot harder to find a job these days. And there's this mindset that it's a false security, man, that hey, I got this job, it's going to last. People kind of feel bad that they must be not loyal to their employer or something if they start to look for other opportunities out there. But when you kind of stand back and you go to linkedin.com, you take a look at the average tenure of a person these days. It's not 30 years like it was with our grandparents or our parents. It's more like 3-4 years. So you've got to wake up to the reality that this is a whole new job search market, and you've got to constantly be looking for another opportunity. The last thing you want to do is wait for some employer to pull out the rug from under you and you're out of a job, because that's the worst scenario, because obviously time is money. And by all means, do everything possible to discreetly be in an effective job search.
And you can look for new opportunities discreetly.
You can, yeah.
Comes the term confidential job search.
Yeah, the key thing there, I think, these days has to do with your LinkedIn profile. As far as a discreet, confidential job search, you need to constantly have your LinkedIn profile, which is the new first impression of you. It's got to be written in such a way that you got two audiences in mind for that. One is going to be a prospective employer is going to be looking at that, and you want them to go, wow, we want to talk to this person. But at the same time, you've got to have the LinkedIn profile written in such a way that your current employer, if they were reading that, would not suspect you're in a job search. They would think you're a happy camper and you don't want to go anywhere. So,
yeah, it makes sense. Well, so we have all these new tools. social media obviously
Mhm.
has been on the rise for the past decade. Before that, we didn't even have social media, you know.
That's kind of amazing, isn't it? When you really think about that. I mean, 10 years ago, even that term social media, I don't know if it had gone into the public consciousness, but I wasn't really all that familiar with it. And I think most people think of Facebook, but social media is far more than Facebook, obviously.
People don't understand the importance of social media and how it impacts your career.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, now we are seeing many cases of people losing out on career opportunities simply because somebody doesn't like what they see on their social media.
Mm.
Political
Okay.
bias is a thing. But we have all these tools now, social media, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all these new ways to promote yourself online, which is the number one way now to land yourself a good position. Um, and that comes back to, I think the two biggest ones obviously are referral programs and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, social media and LinkedIn and stuff like that. And then obviously, you know, you send your resume in because that's just kind of the norm.
Yeah, but
And
you know, just to ask you a question real quick, because you're obviously the social media guru, you must run across people all the time that are like, okay, I'm familiar with social media. I can do it on my own. Um, and it reminds me of that old saying, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, do you see that often where people think, okay, I've got my whole online reputation management down. I don't need help. You must see that all day long.
yeah, people all the time when I try to explain the concept of online reputation management, they don't understand the severity of it. They, you know, they use social media. Sometimes, you know, it's limited. Sometimes they only have a Facebook account, or sometimes they don't. I mean, sometimes they don't even use Facebook. But employers and recruiters, HR managers, they're all looking into people's social media generally when they are researching about a potential candidate. So the thing is people need to be aware of how things have kind of changed now. You know, 77% of HR managers are looking potential candidates up online before they even do the interview process, which is a huge, you know, it's a huge jump from what we've seen before. And so
Hmm.
people, when you try to explain online reputation management, they aren't even aware of the risks of, you know, if they're not presenting themselves efficiently online,
Hmm.
then they're not even, you know, 7 times out of 10 they're not going to get an interview.
But you know, it
So
shouldn't come as any surprise because if I'm an employer, I want to find out everything possible about this candidate before I hire them. And what better way to do that? You know, classic is okay, I'm going to read their LinkedIn profile, I'm going to read their resume, we'll do the whole interview thing. We'll talk to their references. But if I'm investing a lot of money into a candidate here, and I obviously am if they're going to become my employee, I want to go online. I want to see what they're saying online or what people are saying about them online. And I think that escapes, um, you know, that it kind of escapes most people that are in a job search that think it isn't important, but it is. It's as important as everything else I just covered: resume, LinkedIn profile, interview skills, online reputation management. Obviously, it's all part of how you package yourself. So,
yeah, absolutely. Um, a lot of people don't know it's a thing. And so it's a new concept that people sort of have to wrap their head around and start being familiar with, because it's going to be more prevalent, I think is the word I want to use, than ever before when performing a job search today.
right,
Online
absolutely.
reputation management is essential. I mean, it literally can mean the difference between, you know, landing that role and success and failure. It can mean the difference between success and failure when it
You
comes
know,
to
there's
your
that,
career.
and there's that saying, you know, the devil's in the details. And this is just one of those details that separates the people that land the job from those that don't. It's the minute details involved in this case with social media. People kind of think, oh, I've got all the, you know, boxes ticked, but they don't. So,
Exactly. So real quickly. So we talked about social media and then obviously the impacts that has. What about applying for roles without an inside contact?
It ain't
Now,
gonna happen, man.
yeah, so we discussed obviously and I mentioned earlier the two biggest things I think that are kind of changing, or the two biggest things that stand out the most when looking for a new job is having an inside contact or referral programs,
Mm-hmm.
and your online reputation management, social media, and how that's affecting that. So, mistake that people make a lot is, they just submit their resume, whether it's through an online service like Indeed,
Yep.
or whatever. So if you don't have an so that's a big mistake people are making. They don't have an
It's
inside contact.
huge.
How does that affect? How does that
Why in the
affect
world?
results?
Yeah, why in the world would you today apply to a role anywhere without an inside contact? You already know it's not going to happen. In fact, I would challenge the listeners to think about the last couple of jobs that they had and basically ask yourself, did I have an inside contact? I already know the answer. The answer is yeah, you did. So here's the thing that's the most amazing to me. Only 7% of people today apply to a role online, obviously, with an inside contact. 7%. And think of that as like this narrow little door that you got to go through to get a job. And you would think, okay, if 7% of people are applying online through an inside contact, or you can call it an employee referral program if you want, then surely 7% of people are landing jobs that way. But no, that the answer is it's actually 40% of jobs are on the other side of that narrow little door. So just look at the stats themselves, and you realize how critical that inside contact is, probably more so than ever. But here's the bigger picture, which is those inside contacts. In a way, they're the new recruiters. These are the employees of a particular company, and they probably are going to collect an employee referral commission, compensation, whatever term you want to use, if you end up landing a job through their company. So that company that's hiring a person that way, it's a total win-win. They get a top quality candidate because they know their own employee wouldn't refer anything less than a top quality candidate. They end up paying the employee $3,000 or whatever, which is, a fraction of what they would have paid a recruiter. But I think the real big picture here is simply this. With our company, we've got maybe 120 candidates a year that go through here. Out of those 120, how many of those people landed a job without an inside contact? The answer is maybe one. So those stats all by itself should sober people to realize, don't even apply to a job without an inside contact. It's a complete waste of your time.
And I think it's also important to note that those 40% of the jobs, those are the jobs that people really want.
Yeah, absolutely. So get an inside contact. Don't leave home without it. So
I got a few more interesting statistics here for online reputation management. Every day, over 1 billion names are searched on Google, and 77% of recruiters look potential employees up during the hiring process. 70% of recruiters check applicants' social media profiles. 57% have at least found content which caused them not to hire someone.
Could you back up just a second? The 70%, read that again. I'm sorry.
70% of recruiters check applicants' social media profiles. That includes like LinkedIn.
All right. So that's huge. And people need the wake up call to realize once again how important that is. And it's continuing to grow. So,
yeah, it says 97%, or sorry, 90%. 90% of all recruiters and hiring managers use LinkedIn.
which is a form of social media, because anytime you make a comment on LinkedIn, you don't just have a profile sit in there. You're clicking on things that you like. You're putting postings out there. You're putting articles out there. So again, people don't think of it this way, but LinkedIn really is a very powerful form of social media.
Yeah, you definitely have to filter yourself a little bit. Unfortunately, political bias is a thing. And so when it comes to social media management, it's especially during the hiring process. Obviously, we have a service that goes through our candidate's social media and screens it for anything that could potentially deter a recruiter or HR manager from conducting an interview with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more essential than ever to make sure that you're, like I said before, presenting yourself online. Uh, that's gonna that's going to appeal to someone who's looking through your stuff, basically.
Yeah, and let's just be brutally honest. The employer is looking for absolutely any excuse, whatever, to not interview you.
Exactly. So it comes to this. We kind of come to this point of packaging yourself,
Mm-hmm.
branding yourself. That's essentially what you have to do.
Which is hard for people to make a product out of themselves. I mean, God, that's very cold and clinical, and yet you have to do it.
Yeah, it's a new concept for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
it's new, but it's not. Um, you are marketing yourself, and you have to do everything that you can to market yourself efficiently, especially if you want to land the right role.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. And I would just touch on probably one of the biggest challenges I see with people out there is in both their resume and their LinkedIn profile. And, for that matter, their interview skills, people tend to, I use the word obituary. They tend to write an obituary. This is where I was. This is what I did. They write their resume and then they copy and paste it into their LinkedIn profile, which is not a good idea. And at the end of the day, all they have is this obituary of where I was, what I did, and it does not lead to the role that they want next. Um, it basically leads to a role very similar to the one they just left. Well, there's a reason why they're just leaving that other role. What, they weren't happy. So again, the whole branding 101 thing here with packaging comes down to this. What is your unique value today among your peers? And what is your unique value into the near future? You need to make a um, product out of yourself and brand yourself both on that resume and LinkedIn profile. That is by far the best way for you to go find, at least package yourself to go find a new role.
And it's funny because I was just thinking of, brings us back to the dating model, right?
Dating service.
You know,
Yep.
you people, there's those people out there that, they go into a relationship and it doesn't work out. And then they go into another relationship that's almost exactly like the last one that they had. And then that one's unsuccessful. And they tend to always try to find the same type of, it's weird. People uh, they kind of look for the same qualities. And the same thing could be said for, uh, looking for a job. And it all comes back to that comfortability. I think people are just complacent and they're settling and they're too afraid to make that initial step. Now, the good thing is obviously that we mentor people through that whole process.
Right.
We're there for them every step of the way. So sometimes people just need that, that push in a way where that push for people to kind of take that step, because you'd be surprised once you kind of open your eyes a little bit to what's out there. People are kind of blown away. They never thought of these concepts before. They've never thought about online reputation management. What the heck is this? Like, I just want to submit my resume and I just, want to pay the bills. And, all this new information and concepts are, it can be a little bit overwhelming.
I would just tell people, I would just tell people, look, on job searching today, honest to God, it's a lot like an online dating service. And if you think about it, okay, what do online dating services do? Well, first of all, everybody listening to this has got a friend or colleague or someone that they know that has used an online dating service. A lot of people are getting married through those things. So we, I admit it, with our company, Medical Sales Mentors, we just copied the model because it works. So if you go to an online dating service, what do? Well, the first thing you do is not go on dates. First thing you do is you fill out a profile. The profile helps you to understand who you are and how you've changed. And then the profile also helps you to articulate who you are today, not 5 years ago, for a potential date. So that's sort of the packaging part of what we do. We happen to just do that in the form of online reputation management and interview skills, resume, LinkedIn profile. But then the promotion part of it is, from the dating service model standpoint, is, okay, you filled out this profile. Now what? Well, now what is the dates? You're going to go on coffee dates, and you're going to get a feel for, is this the right company for me? You've got all these questions. We do the same thing here. We get people into those interviews for both advertised and non-advertised opportunities, in which you can basically, you're doing a coffee date with someone, you're conducting an interview or an informational interview or a phone chat to determine, is it a good match. And that's exactly the same thing with a dating model. And then after that initial coffee date, as it were, you can decide, do you want to move forward based upon the experience of that coffee date. So it's the same model here. We do the same thing. It works.
And I think people forget, I mean, it's more competitive than ever before.
Oh, it is.
I think Silicon Valley, over 50%. And you're not just competing with people in the US, you're competing with people overseas as well.
Oh, I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yep. It's you have to be competitive. I mean,
You have to.
as blunt and harsh as that is, if you're not competitive, you're not going to get the position that you want. And in
No, you're not. And I see way too many people that are passive out there. And in the past, what happened was they had the luxury of sitting there and waiting for some recruiter somewhere to call them and to say, hey, I got this job. That sort of a mindset, that passive job search mindset, it just doesn't cut it, with very rare exceptions. So,
well, it's easy and comfortable, you know. You
yeah.
you get online, you fill out a couple applications, you
Hmm.
send in your resume, maybe you text your friend and ask if they have they know of something out there, or a colleague, whatever.
Which is, you're
And
describing the classic real world job search of today and why it's not working. It's because that used to work, pre-COVID to a certain extent. But now, with things, with the unemployment rate back up, more people competing for less jobs, it is ultra competitive. And that whole, you have to be extremely well packaged. You have to be ultra competitive. You cannot do what everybody else is doing, because you're going to end up not getting the interview, not getting the job.
well, I would even argue pre-COVID, the what I mentioned before. I mean, it doesn't really. I think people get in that comfortable zone of, oh, I filled out a couple applications today. I sent in a couple
So
resumes today. That's
false
good. That's good. I'll do that same thing tomorrow, and then 3 weeks goes by.
time
And
is not your friend. Yeah. And there's a false security there that, okay, I'm doing all this busy work, but at the end of the day, it's, well, what works? And for us, what works is what we learn from our candidates as we help them land new roles. So we are basically like the teachers that learn as much from their students as vice versa. And what works, what got them those roles, is always the devil in the detail stuff that the winners did that the non-winners didn't do. It's that simple. And so that's a big part of what we do, is recognize devil's in the details when it comes to success. And we're here to, train people on those best practices.
so we've talked about packaging yourself,
Hmm.
and there's obviously everyone has the ability to sort of find the information that's out there and do the things that they need to do to package themselves. whether that's through social media or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now the more tricky, the trickier thing to do is, promoting yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and so let's kind of segue into that a little bit. Um,
Sure.
like I said, there's a lot of information out there, and it's a little overwhelming. So you figure out a way to package yourself correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know how to you do the things that you need to do to appeal to recruiters. So let's talk about promoting yourself. And so a
Sure.
lot of people don't know about the unadvertised job market or what that really means, or not
Right.
knowing how to break into it. I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
What are some good tips to help people as far as breaking into the unadvertised job market?
For starters, I would say that the whole unadvertised job market is absolutely booming. I'm not going to sit here and go, okay, I did all this, research and interviewed 1,000 people, but just based upon our demographic, which is about 120 people a year, um, and as they land new roles, one of the first things I ask them is, was it an advertised or unadvertised role? Right now, it's at least 50% of the roles that are out there are unadvertised. And I think that number is going to grow. And when you start drilling down into the granular level details on those jobs, what you find is that those unadvertised jobs today, right now in the COVID world, are vacated roles, almost all of them. One day after COVID goes away, those unadvertised roles, I suspect, will be growth roles. It'll just be companies wanting to grow, and they want to get top talent in, but they don't want to do it through traditional means, i.e., posting a job posting to the public. So what we've got now, as far as the unadvertised job market is concerned, is vacated roles all over the place. And what happens is you've got to aggressively get in and pursue unadvertised opportunities. My recommendation would be through an informational interview. I think that would be the top way to get into the unadvertised job market, is start to conduct um, informational interviews with people that are working at companies that you deem of interest to you based upon the technology, the product stuff that you can get behind and you're excited by. Because what's happening is you've got this 20% turnover rate in the B2B sales force over the course of a year. And those are vacated roles, and they're all over the place out there. And the best way to get in to find out about those opportunities is not to be passive, not to wait for that person at that company to contact you, because that's just, you don't have the luxury of being that complacent. You need to set up informational interviews. Typically, one of three things happen when you do set up those informational interviews with someone at that company. So you're going to be asking them all these questions. You got about, 24 questions. Here we go. This is the coffee date part of the dating service model. You're on the phone. You're talking to them. One of three things typically happens. You either hit perfect timing because there's a vacated role for which you're well qualified. Second, you've also had perfect timing in that you spoke to that person. Established a real relationship with them, and during the course of that conversation, and there may not be anything for you now, but all of a sudden next week or the week after there is, because that's just statistical reality of jobs being vacated. There's more and more of them coming up. Third option is that when you are on the phone and you're talking to the individuals that are in the inside contacts at these companies, you'll find that they will often, and I know this sounds like sci-fi, but they'll often go into their networks of their own colleagues working at other companies to check out things for you. That's a total win-win. We saw that a lot here in our programs, and it was really nice to see, because at the end of the day, people really do want to help other people. And you would think, oh, okay, it's just because they're going to get that $3,000 employee referral, but no, it's not. It's not that. It's people recognizing that they want to help somebody because they kind of see themselves having been in those shoes not that long previously.
So what do you say to people who don't have a good network? A lot of people, maybe they've been, complacent at their job for years. They don't really have a lot of connections.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have the tools like LinkedIn to kind of network with people and reach out, but you know, a lot of people are probably sitting there saying to themselves, where do I
I have a
start?
good network. Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's find out. Let's find out. Do you have a good network? Here's the litmus test. We want to run an audit. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go into LinkedIn. I want you to click on my network, and then I want you to pull down all your first level connections. And then what I want you to do is um, click on the industries that you're targeting. So let's say it's, medical devices, biotech, pharmaceutical. Okay. How many people do you know that are out there um, within those markets that you're going to be aiming for that you personally know? Write down the number. I guarantee you it's going to be a wake-up call. It's not very good. And also bear in mind that what you're looking at with that, this is kind of the MO of people doing a job search today. You're also looking at people you probably couldn't really use many of them because you're conducting a confidential job search. So how many of those people would you know and trust to keep confidential that you're in a job search? Write down that number. It's going to be a low number, but it's a starting metric for the quality of your network. Here's another thing you want to do while you're in there. We found that about 20% of our candidates are landing a job through their college alum. Here's where it gets really interesting. Those college alum are almost never someone that they know right now. They never met them before. They never even went to school at the same time as those people. So here's a great audit metric for the quality of your network. Go into go into LinkedIn, pull up the name of your college, pull up the number of first level connections that you have that are within the functions that you're aiming for. Let's say it's sales. That are working within the markets you're aiming for. Let's put down, med device, biotech, pharma. And what you're going to find is a real sobering wake-up call. You're probably going to find you have maybe 4, maybe 5 people within that meet that the requirement, which would be a really good inside contact to help you. So once you realize from the start, okay, I'm weak, I got to improve on this, then we can go and we can move on and we can beef up your network of quality potential inside contacts. So it's very much like, and I hate to say this, but if you're starting a diet, I hate to say this,
All the analogies.
what's the first thing you do? You step on the scale. You've got to have a starting metric from which to determine, all right, I'm going to make progress here. So let's see how much I weigh. Go from there.
Yeah, doing the same thing and expecting different results, right?
Yeah, very much so. And unfortunately, that's exactly the mindset that we see out there. I'm not being critical. I'm just being realistic. This is what we see.
Well, and I think it's about shifting your mindset too, which brings me to the point of, finding the right employers.
Yeah.
Rather than coming it from the standpoint of, oh, okay, well, I need to, uh, I need to prove myself to this recruiter. You want to find a position where you're kind of doing the vetting process. You're kind of filtering out what you don't want to work for, and it puts the power back into your hands. Whereas you're this ideal candidate for all these companies to hire, and which company is right for you, rather than the reverse where you kind of just pick the job that comes to you first.
Yeah. No, and people, they do not know how to find and target the right employer. So, here's some thoughts on that. For starters, there's there's public reports out there, best companies to work for in America. I find that those tend to be pretty spot on as far as naming, who are the companies that consistently treat their people really well. So that's one tool that you have. I think another one though is just to put together a list of what you think are the top 12 employers that you would like to go to work for, and then get on the phone and get in. Don't do this cold calling. Again, it's who you know, but get on the phone with people that are in the role that you're seeking at that particular company and ask them, you got like 12 questions or so. What is it like to work here? Do they promote from within? Do they reimburse you for education? You know, what do you like the most? What do you like the least? So at the end of the day, you're not asking enough questions, most people, and they just take whatever role that they come across. Another way that we find the right employers for people here, it's kind of the flip side of the coin. It's not like these giant companies that you're going to work for. What we do here is I just go through, we have this small army of inside contacts, and I ask people, I ask them about 10 questions about the type of role that they would like. And then I go into our little army here of inside contacts, and I filter out from those individuals based upon what it is they're selling, the size of the company and all these other metrics that we've identified to be of interest to the candidate. And what we find is we end up with this list of about 20 companies that, you and I are not that familiar with because they're smaller. So we don't want to just aim for the big companies, but you and I have seen this for working over years. Some of the best opportunities out there at the right companies are really these smaller, mid-sized employers, but you're not going to hear about them. You're not going to hear about
companies too.
Yeah. So that's what we do, is we find out who are these companies, and then here we go. Don't cold call these folks. We set up informational interviews for our candidates with those inside contacts that we know. Those are not casual relationships. And then they can determine, is this the right company based upon that informational interview with that inside contact.
Yeah. It's, a lot of these smaller companies too, you get a position there and it's the right place at the right time.
Oh yeah.
And so you land an opportunity, and then the company grows, and then you get a bigger salary, and that's generally how it goes. You get in the right place at the right time.
That's all it is. It's just timing. That's all it is. So at the end of the day, they're either hiring or they're not. And, if they're, and it's going to be one of two categories. It's either advertised or it's not. But at the end of the day, how do you find those right employers? It's by having an aggressive, methodical job search process.
And that kind of brings us to, approaching the interview. Obviously, we've covered all the steps that you can take to land the interview. But then there's that fear of, oh, man, I got to do this interview now. And hopefully in the future, we hope to have one of our interview skills training specialists on the podcast. We can interview him and ask him questions and get like the inside scoop there. But why don't you kind of talk about, there's these two titles or two concepts. It's the contestant versus the consultant.
Yeah, this is key. And this falls under the category of stuff I didn't know. All right. So, working with our job search, our interview skills coach here, what I didn't realize is that most people approach an interview as a contestant. So they're sitting there and they've gone through, this sounds horrible, but this is reality. They've gone through all the slick, they've memorized all the answers to all the questions. And so they're there and they're it's like kind of like Miss America, and they're trying to give these really slick answers to these questions, but it doesn't sound very genuine for starters. And their whole mindset towards themselves is, hey, I'm just a contestant. I'm just competing with all these other people.
So you're telling me world peace isn't the right answer?
Not yet. It may be soon. Uh, so that whole mindset of being a contestant, it just flat out doesn't work. Because you got to realize that you're looking at a relationship here. You know, if you're a contestant, that's like going, this is the George Costanza dating service model. Remember? He would go on all these dates and he would try to modify himself to please the person that he was dating. Well, at the end of the day, he was never being true to himself. And so he was, not happy. He couldn't find the proper date. So contrast that with being a consultant, which very few people do. And here it is. As a consultant, you're going and you're sitting there and now you're asking a lot of questions. You are pre-screening the employer as a potential partner, if you will, versus a classic employer-employee mindset. So you're there basically asking them about the challenges they're facing. You're getting into granular level questions about their challenges, and you're sizing them up as much as they are sizing you up. Now, that mindset of being a consultant versus a contestant, it's all over the place out there. Almost everybody I talk to is this contestant who's trying to regurgitate these perfect, flawless answers to these questions.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they all look the same. Each contestant looks the same. The consultant is the one that's going to stand out. So,
Well, it's like I said before, it's about shifting your mindset to where
yeah.
you're interviewing them in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm interviewing this recruiter or HR manager to see if this company is the right fit for me. Is this
Yeah,
position the right fit for me?
that's the
When
right
you
attitude.
and when you approach it from that mindset, you're just naturally more appealing to the person that's doing the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also have a much better feel for, is this the right company for you? Because you shouldn't be there just to please the person you're interviewing with. You've got to, ask tough questions.
Well, and it really comes back to social dynamics a little bit, and this is the harsh reality. People, and this is going to sound terrible, but people coming from a position of scarcity
Mm-hmm.
um, are they instantly lose value. When you're
Yeah.
coming from a position of abundance, you are more appealing to people just in general. So
Mm-hmm.
the same thing will apply towards an interview or landing the right role. If you're come if the person conducting the interview senses that you have all the necessary skills for the job and you're a great candidate, but you have a lot of options, they're going to hire you. They're going to grab you because they want you for their company.
True indeed. Absolutely.
So, well, that about wraps it up. Was there anything else that you would like to add, Mark, in regards to the topics we discussed today?
Yeah, I think just one one final thought here, and that is we've got a lot of people that are out there and they're in a job search. They're trying to do their own thing. They're getting frustrated. And one of the biggest challenges that they face is they have this mindset of, if you build it, they will come. So they have the mindset of, okay, I'm going to package myself, but I'm not going to promote myself. So in other words, I'm going to put together this nice looking LinkedIn profile and I'm going to wait on recruiters to call me. But the reality is that is not the way it works. That's the way most people job search. And then they get really discouraged and disappointed. But at the end of the day, what we're looking at in particular in today's unadvertised job arena is very few times are you going to have the luxury of having somebody call you and say, hey, we want to interview you. You really need to have an aggressive job search process that you can follow methodically that gets you out there, promotes you to those audience, whether they're advertised or not. And you're not waiting for some employer or recruiter to call you because, again, time is money. And, the people that have the mindset of if you build it, they will come. They are the ones that are there out there for 6 months with nothing to show for it. You don't want to be that person.
I think you used the analogy last time. We kind of touched on this, of the guy that's he's looking good, and he's out at the bar, sitting at the bar, wait, waiting for the females to approach him.
Yeah,
When it's like, no, that's not how it works, buddy. You got to put
it
yourself
could.
out there a little bit. I mean, it could, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I don't look like Brad Pitt, but let's say, that's the old school model, which is, hey, I want to find someone. I'm lonely. So what do I do? Let's go down to the bar and just sit there and wait for the best looking women to show up. Is that going to happen? Yeah, but believe me, if she's gorgeous, she might have serious other mental issues going on here. Okay. So that is not the way to find a job, which is ironically how people perceive to do a job, which is to go out to the bar and, try to find the date that way by being sort of passive and just hoping for the best. In reality, the proper dating service model, or the dating model, I should say, that works is this. You go out to a nice restaurant, you meet with friends that mutual acquaintances, who are then introducing you to someone that they think is a good match for you. That describes the proper and effective job search model that you need to follow. But you'd be amazed at how few people follow that model, and they end up being the lonely old man at the bar, still waiting for the perfect woman to show up, and meanwhile they're collecting Social Security all of a sudden. So
And we
time
got plenty
flies.
of stories of that too. We've seen plenty of examples
Yeah,
of
it just doesn't work.
people who just, they do the bare minimum, and then they expect, to be given these crazy high paying positions. And, you know, it's you can't expect it to fall in your lap. That's for sure. You have to be proactive, and you have to put yourself out there first and foremost.
And you
And I
have to
think,
you have to recognize that everything's changed in job searching. It really has. And
yeah,
what do you know uh, about those changes, and how can you leverage those to your advantage? People tend to like to wing it on their job searches, and I kind of politely remind them that you don't know what you don't know, and it could cost you in the form of either money or time, and you don't have the luxury of having a lot of either one.
well, that's the nice thing about having, a mentor during
Yeah.
the job search process, because as we were kind of going through, checking these check boxes here, kind of going
Hmm.
through the different things that people can do here, a lot of this stuff seems kind of, uh, you know, I want to say mundane, or it just seems like I can imagine people saying, "Really, do I really have to go through LinkedIn and try to find college alumni? Like, that doesn't seem like it's going to work."
Yeah,
There's
but it
all
flat
these
out
little
does.
things. Yeah, well, there's all these little things that add up to the bigger picture that people don't think about, and they think, I don't really have to do that. I'll just do again, just the bare minimum. And they're not being competitive. They're not representing themselves online efficiently. They're not packaging and promoting themselves in a sense that makes them appealing to HR managers and recruiters, or all the above. And the thing about having, going through the mentorship program, Quikstart, is we're kind of here to not really be your, I mean, we're your cheerleaders, obviously.
Hmm.
I got the pom poms over here too, if you need that. But um, we're kind of pushing you to do the necessary things that you probably wouldn't choose to do on your own.
Man, is that true? Yep.
Because if a lot of, and it's the reality of, just it's human nature. We kind of, obviously there's people out there that can be proactive, can motivate themselves, and they can do the things that they need to do to find the job that they want. But a lot of people also don't, and they need someone kind of there to guide them a little bit. They need someone there to hold their hand. It's kind of like, the people who, we use these analogies because it's so true to job searching. But like the person that goes to the gym and they kind of just work out, they don't really know what they're doing, but they say, "Oh, I'm doing it," and that works that's good. That it works to some extent. But then, hiring a fitness trainer, right? The fitness
Hmm.
trainer is going to show you all these exercises that you didn't know about. And it's actually going to challenge you, and it's going to be a lot tougher than if you were to do it on your own, because there's going to be all this stuff that your body's not used to.
And then they emotionally support you during the process, which is what our mentors do. Yeah, I hear that.
Exactly. And then they also are held accountable. When you're going, when you have a mentor kind of guiding you through all these things, and we're, if we're helping you find that role that you're gonna, hopefully retire from,
Mm-hmm.
um, we're holding you accountable to your homework, basically the things that you need, the steps that you need to do on your end to be successful. We're going to hold you accountable. Oh, did you do these things? Did you do this? And while it may seem uh, minuscule in the grand scheme of things, it all adds up to
Success.
your
Yep.
success.
Yep. True indeed.
All right, well, that seems like a good final thought.
Okay.
And Mark, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Um, Hopefully, we'll have you on for the next podcast. And I'd like to, like I said, I'd like to interview our interview skills coach at some
Yeah.
point. I really think, we've talked a lot about the last three podcasts were very focused on the, packaging and promoting yourself, basically, unadvertised job market, that sort of thing. But there's a whole new level of challenge when it comes to the interview process, obviously, because
Mm-hmm.
you can only portray so much online. And then once you land the interview, which is the goal, then you take the next step. So I think people would really appreciate that information. So hopefully we will do what we can to get that person on. And then also, I want people to look forward to. We do want to kind of dive into the whole pilot program and how that industry is changing. I'm sure people are curious about that. So hopefully we can get um, that person on as well. And any final thoughts, Mark?
No, I mean, we covered quite a bit there today, so I appreciate that. All I would tell people is this: look, it's been a real low tide here for a long time, in the form of the COVID, and obviously, it's been difficult in a job search because of accessibility. You can't meet people face to face, prospective employers. So we're doing all these Zoom meetings. But I can tell you this, having watched this over the course of this year during COVID, um, what I'm seeing is finally, our candidates are back to getting interviews on a consistent basis. And now, at last, we've got people that are landing jobs, they're getting job offers. So again, at the end of the day, you're going through a pandemic, you're going through a presidential election in which a lot of employers aren't going to be able to do anything between now and knowing who our next president is,
And then
because
we got the holidays coming up.
holidays coming up. I saw Godzilla the other day. It's remarkably shorter than you'd think. He's kind of like Tom Cruise, but
At this point, I ain't gonna rule anything out.
okay. So there's a lot going on, but I always tell people, especially those that are sailors, it's like, look, whenever there's a low tide, prolonged period of time, there's going to be a high tide always. And what we're seeing is that high tide is slowly coming back. So chin up, we'll get the vaccine, we'll get the president, whoever it is, elected. Companies will finally be able to move forward in their talent acquisition and their business development, which means people are going to be hired and interviewed, and things will, I don't know, they'll ever get back to normal again. But again, at the end of the day, just remember that it's the most prepared person that lands the role. It's not the most qualified person.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Have a
Have a good one,
wonderful
sir.
day,
You
and
like,
we'll talk to you all soon.
all right. Take care.